In today's show, season reviews for Jerami Grant and Malcolm Brogdon. We talk the value of vets and whether either of them have a future in Portland. Welcome to Locked On Blazers. Let's get into it.
You are Locked On Trailblazers, your daily Portland Trailblazers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
What up, world? It's your past first point guard and Trailblazers reporter, Mike Richmond. You are listening to another episode of Locked On Blazers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, available wherever you get podcasts and also on YouTube. Thanks for making this show your first listen, coming at you each and every weekday, Monday through Friday. So make it a part of your daily routine. Make it your first listen. Tell your friends to do the same. It's Locked On Blazers, your team every day. In today's show, we are continuing our exit interview series with our season reviews for Malcolm Brogdon and Jerami Grant. Here's how we do these things. We look back and then we look forward. So we'll talk about what each of them did in a Blazers uniform this year. We'll revisit my preseason predictions for best and worst case scenarios for both of them, talk about where they landed in the second segment, and then spin it forward. What's the future of these two dudes? I can't imagine either of them are long-timers, but there's a chance they're both in uniform in the fall. We'll talk about what that means and the implications of all of it in the third segment. Let's start with the season review. We'll kick it off with Jerami Grant first. JG averaged 21 points, 3.5 boards, and 2.8 assists, shot 45.1% from the floor, 40.2% from three, and 81.7% from the free throw line. He appeared in 54 games, all starts. He's pretty much the only true power forward on the Blazers roster, and he's not even really he is a power forward by function, because he's just I don't think you want him to guard super fast wings, and he's not a great ball handler, so you'd rather have or passer, so you'd rather have another that type of skill set on the floor. But he's not like a big, beefy, powerful, rebounding, physical power forward at all. He's a true stretch four on a team that could use a different type of skill set there, but they were going to lean on him, and they did. This was a weird year for Jerami because he's basically healthy until he wasn't, and then we never saw him again. He had a concussion in early December and missed a couple games. Then he missed a game here and there with a back thing and missed a couple games with illness, but he mostly was available. And then he super duper wasn't available, and he missed 20 of the final 21 games with a quad and a hamstring injury. And he continued to stretch where he has not played a game in April since the year 2021. And that season was slightly delayed, so he even played games in May, but he just, each of the last three seasons, he has not appeared at the end of the year because he's played on bad teams that would value holding him out over playing. It's a strange thing with Grant. When he tried to come back from that late hamstring injury, he played one game against the Celtics and he looked awful. He looked like a ghost. So I don't think the injury was entirely fake. He did not look physically right in the final game of the season that he played in, but then he missed, a month. And then we never saw him again, and it was just clear that we were never going to hear from JG again. And then he declined to do an exit interview, and that was that. This was the beginning of a $160 million 5-year, $160 million contract that includes a player option. He has 3 guaranteed years and a fourth one that he can exercise remaining on his deal if the Blazers are going to. If he wants to be here and they want him here, he's here for a long time. So I wouldn't read too much into it. Obviously, players get traded, all that. But this was the post Dame era. I want to for those of you who are maybe believe in some conspiracy stuff, I want to throw this out here. There's a lot of talk about how the Blazers kind of signed Jerami Grant to appease Damian Lillard, and I don't believe that for a minute. I do not think that is true at all. I don't think that is true at even one little bit. The way that signing went down is the week before that was on Tuesday. Damian Lillard met with Joe Cronin, came back from Paris and said, "Let's have a nice little chat." It's not the type of thing you do when you're happy with your boss, is have a private chat in his office for an extended period of time. That was on Tuesday. What do you think they talked about? On Friday night, they agreed to a contract with Jerami Grant. And they signed him a few days later when they legally could. I do not think that Joe Cronin went into the free agent period that weekend under the impression that Damian Lillard was extremely happy to be around and was going to be around for a long time. On Friday night, they agreed to the contract extension. On Saturday, Damian Lillard requested a trade. I don't think this caught the Blazers by surprise. Jerami Grant's here because the Blazers didn't want to lose him for nothing. And it was fine this year. I think some of his warts showed up a little bit, and I'll talk about that more in the second segment. Like, the things he doesn't do were more pronounced on this roster than they had been on the previous roster, which with a little more talent. But in general, he shot decent from three, and he averaged 20 a game. Some of the stuff, like, he's just kind of black holey. He takes some bad shots. He's not a passer. He's not a rebounder. I don't think in either of his 2 seasons in Portland he's been a particularly impactful defender. He's not a terrible one. Like, he's not a hyper negative on that end, but he's a guy who's there. I think on a team with better defenders, Jerami Grant could probably be part of a really good defensive team, but he's not. He's just not going to raise the floor too much on a bad defensive team. Although the Blazers were, when they were healthy, kind of fine on defense. They finished like 23rd with their personnel, which I think is like in some ways a triumph, but obviously still a bad defense in the league. That's Jerami Grant's season. 54 games, 21, 3.5, and just shy of 3. Malcolm Brogdon, who came over in the trade with when the Blazers shipped Drew Holiday to Boston, and MB came over with Rob Williams. Malcolm Brogdon just does what he does. He finished averaging 15.7 points, 3.8 boards, and 5.5 assists. Shot 44% from the floor, 41.2% from three, and 81.9% from the line. He appeared in 39 games and 25 starts. I think the real problem here for these guys is that neither Malcolm Brogdon or Jerami Grant played enough games. Grant 54 is not enough. Malcolm Brogdon 39 is not even close. It's not half the season. He didn't participate in half the games. You need, like, obviously injuries have been part of his history and part of his story in the league. So like that's a risk going in. You kind of know when you make the trade for him that's like part of the deal, right? Is that he's had trouble staying healthy for in a couple different places, and it's like. But I think that the big part of Malcolm Brogdon's season was availability, because when he played, he was pretty darn good. He was pretty darn good. Like, I think there's people who have hotter takes about this than me, and I won't even really entertain them because I think it's just like factually untrue. But I don't think he was by any means the Blazers' best player. I think that's silly season, but like, he was the most efficient guard. He is a competent defender, if not like above average one, but he's like, will compete on that end. He can make plays, although he's probably more of a natural scorer than a natural playmaker. And he was able to score when they gave him opportunities to go score. He was able to score with efficiency. He's not like going to lift all, like the Blazers to the worst offense in the league, or 29th, I guess. Shout out to Memphis, who had played 50 different starting lineups this year. But like, he's not going to raise the tide on his own, but like, he's a competent guy who can score at a couple different levels as a pull-up jump shooter going either direction, as a driver, and as a spot-up guy. And he was really good as a spot-up guy. And I think on a better team, his spot-up skills would be even more magnified. And on this team, they weren't, particularly because of the way, probably because Anfernee Simon's like playmaking deficiencies and Scoot Henderson just not being a very good basketball player yet. And Brogdon was often paired as a 2 next to point guards, right? Playing next to Scoot or next to Ants. And I think you're just not getting the most out of him. He can play both guard spots. It's fine. Like, he's that natural 6-man combo guy who can play both spots. But if you're going to maximize what he does, I think you want to put bigger players next to him and let him play go score point guard. I think the best role for Malcolm Brogdon at this stage would be like backup point guard, go get it type of offensive player. Like, hey, you're in here and you're basically going to quarterback the offense as a playmaker and a scorer, and you really do have carte blanche to shoot the ball a lot. And when he had that role for the Blazers, he was good. He didn't play enough. Right at the All-Star break, heading into the All-Star break, he missed a game with a knee contusion. And then he got sick, and he missed the last couple games before the All-Star break with an illness. And I was like, all right, well, heading into the break, there was like, okay, maybe the Blazers aren't going to trade Malcolm Brogdon, which I had been banging the drum, as you will hear from Michael in the past in the second segment, banging the drum for them to trade him for many months. But it was like, well, at least you'll get to see him in the second half of the season, and some of like the value that they, the soft stuff value that they like him as a leader. And I think he, particularly his relationship with Shaedon Sharpe, I think there was some value there, and then he just didn't play. He had elbow tendonitis that they announced coming out of the All-Star break. He was going to miss 2 weeks, and then when after that they had like a really vague, like Malcolm Brogdon will continue to do whatever it is he's doing, talk to you later type of update, and that was it. Then we just never saw him again. And he didn't play. He had played 39 of the first 49 games, which is on pace for like 65, which would have been great. Played 67 the year before, 65 then. It's like tight. Malcolm Brogdon playing 65 games. You kind of bank on him missing about 15. That's just the nature of it, and sort of his health struggles throughout his career. And then he doesn't play after game 49. And, you miss a pretty big stretch when you don't play in the final 33 games of the regular season. And so he goes into the offseason as a player on an expiring deal. He has one season remaining. He's under contract for next year, and the Blazers, if they don't do anything with him, he's back on the team. And I think both him and Jerami Grant have this strange position where they're older, and they're not elite players, but they're effective older vets who could help good teams. And they're playing on a team that is at a crossroads. I want to talk about the crossroads, and I want to talk about what I thought these guys were going to be at the beginning of the season. We'll revisit in the second segment, Michael from the past to talk best and worst case scenarios as I had predicted them way back when. Jerami Grant's I recorded before Dame got traded in September. Woo-hoo-hoo. That's a while back. And Malcolm Brogdon was obviously right after the Dame trade. We will revisit Michael from the past, talk about where these guys landed and what is up next for them, and a little bit of the value of veterans in the second segment. But first, I want to tell you about DoorDash. You probably know DoorDash because they bring food to your house. If you're like me, they deliver you Dude's Grill when you're having a hankering. But they can also help you make your mom smile. You can surprise your mom with flowers, with gadgets, and self-care essentials. All in one place, delivered right to her door. Does your mom have a sweet tooth? Is she a tech enthusiast? A beauty connoisseur? Is she outdoorsy? No matter what your mom is into, you can make her smile with a fruit or a flower bouquet or makeup or tech gear or workout wear and more, and you can get it all on DoorDash. Get all your Mother's Day gifts all in one place. And get 50% off your next order, up to $15 when you spend $15 or more on your next flower, convenience, grocery, or retail order now with the code LOCKEDONNBA. That's Locked On NBA. Make Mother's Day special. Order using DoorDash today. Terms apply. All right. So what I do in the preseason leading into the season is I go through all the players on the team. And I haven't done two-way guys in the past because I didn't think we needed 18 of them. But now I'm going to have to learn my lesson. But I do it for every player on the roster. And we set the sort of best case and worst case scenarios. These are best case scenarios within reason and worst case scenarios without injury. So we're not talking about, hurting your body. We're talking about things that happen within the lines. And what I want to play you my thoughts from back in the fall about what I thought about both Malcolm Brogdon and Jerami Grant heading into the season, and kind of talk about where they landed and their sort of intrinsic value to the Blazers based on kind of what their best and worst case scenarios and where they landed within that. Hit it, Michael, from the past. The best case scenario for Malcolm Brogdon is that he has another elite shooting season. He continues his run as a 25-5 guy on a permanent basis like he's been for the last 5 years. Last season he played off the bench and he didn't get his 36 minutes a night as a starter, right? But on a permanent basis, his per 36, he was still right there, 25-5 on his averages. He was 15-4-4 last year because he just didn't play that much because he was in a bench role. But he's been, for 5 straight seasons, 25-5 on a per minute basis. You're looking at his per 36 numbers. Best case scenario, he stays right there with another monster shooting season. And after a dominant per 36 run in Portland, he garners a decent first round pick in a trade sometime in the coming months or weeks. I do not think there's a best case scenario where Malcolm Brogdon is like the answer at point guard. The worst case scenario for Malcolm Brogdon is where he was once comfortable as a backup in Boston. He just doesn't accept a 20-minute bench role as a mentor on a young team that's not nearly as good. And he ends up leaving in a trade for spare parts because his shooting regresses a little bit from an absolutely monster career year last year, and the vibes are a little bit off. So what's the best case scenario for Jerami Grant? Well, it's something akin to his first 35 games in a Blazers uniform, except with even more volume. He averaged 22.5 on 45% shooting from three, well above his career average. He was, 40% from three that he shot for the year was his career best. 45% is, a magnitude above it. He was shooting the lights out. And the best case scenario is that he continues to be just an elite half-court catch-and-shoot shooter, playing off the guards, Anthony Simons and Scoot Henderson and Shaedon Sharpe to some extent. Jerami Grant continues to be an elite half-court player. And instead of having a drop-off, whether it's just sort of the natural math of how it works, or if it's related to this quad injury, that seems like it's a pretty clear demarcation of when he started to shoot poorly, he continues to push up towards that career best shooting season yet again. And as his usage continues to tick up on a Blazers team that is going to lean on him a lot this year, he puts up another career best efficiency season, or at least near career best efficiency season, as he did last season. And he's in the casual conversation for all-star snubs when we get to MLK Day. The worst case scenario is the flip side of that coin, is that he's still likely to score. I think Jerami Grant is pretty much a lock to score 20 a game. I think 24-4, maybe 24-3 rather, is like what he averaged last season, just put in the books. The difference will be the dip in efficiency as his workload increases. And the worst case scenario is that the catch and shoot monster that he was early in the season never returns, with less Damian Lillard terror to play off of in the half court. And without that super gravity of one of the best offensive players of his generation with Dame, is that Jerami Grant doesn't get as clean a looks, doesn't get as easy a looks, and just doesn't become that just elite three-point shooter that he was to start the first half of the season. And on a team that's less lethal on offense, his shortcomings are further emphasized and exaggerated. His lack of rebounding, his lack of playmaking, and his difficulty getting around screens on defense are more of a glaring issue for a team with much less margin for error. Thank you, Michael from the past, you handsome devil. So I don't think either guys hit their worst case scenario. I don't think you can say Malcolm Brogdon nailed the best case scenario. He finished just shy of his 20 points, 5 rebounds, and 5 assists per 36 minutes. But if you round up, he hit it. He's productive. He does what he does. But you could see that I was banging the drum in October for Malcolm Brogdon to get traded. I stand by it. I felt it strongly in the fall that the best case scenario for Malcolm Brogdon was that he played for another team by the end of the year, and I feel it now. I feel like maybe the market was what it was, and the Blazers couldn't trade him. But I don't know. If the market isn't what you thought it was going to be, whose fault is that? And maybe the Blazers do trade him this summer, and there's some value there. But and they get a good deal, and I'll happily eat crow. I don't even think I need to eat crow, but I'll happily say that they got it right. But I think production-wise, Brogdon was leaned towards his best-case scenario. He didn't shoot as well from three, down to 41 and some change, up from 44 a season ago. And it didn't exactly nail all of his per 36 numbers, but he was productive and effective. And the big thing about him was he just didn't play enough. He just wasn't available. That's the real truth, and we don't do that in the best-case and worst-case scenarios. I think he leaned towards the best-case scenario, quite frankly. For Jerami Grant, I think the pendulum was pretty squarely in the middle, but in terms of production, he shot better from three in his second season with the Blazers with worse teammates than he did in year one with better teammates, or at least one extremely good teammate in Damian Lillard. What changed for Jerami Grant was the 2-point production. He shot above 50% on twos, and I think what really changed this year was he just took a bunch of crap. He took way more bad shots. It was that heavier diet of worse shots. I mentioned this in an early season show that I wasn't able to track down, but this is very early in the season that I worry that the Blazers sort of didn't have that sort of emotional core, right? That they didn't have that sort of veteran guy who was going to command presence in the locker room and kind of be that leader, and that Brogdon seemed like the player most likely capable of that personality-wise, but he was brand new to the team, and it's just hard to sort of step into that role necessarily. I think Jerami Grant is well respected in the locker room. I get the sense in the times that I'm in there that people really like like him. But I don't think he has that sort of like gravitas leader type of personality. And Brogdon, while he sort of leans that way, has always felt like a short timer here. When I recorded that video, he was still rocking number 92. And then he was like, actually, I'm going to stick around. I'm going to wear a normal jersey. And like, certainly he has some leadership qualities that I think we saw on display. But then at his exit interview, he like admitted openly that he has no idea what his future is and then spoke in the past tense, I enjoyed my time in Portland type of thing. There is value in veterans. There is value in veterans. I don't think, both of these guys, like I said, like they kind of the pendulum kind of leans probably towards best case scenario in terms of just like production. But really what they would bring to this team is like soft stuff. It isn't just the shooting and half court offense and ability to run a pick and roll and competent defense. It's soft stuff, right? It's teaching guys to do things the right way. It's demanding a certain level of sort of attention to detail and respect of the game and all those things. And, I don't think either of them are negatives in that department. I just don't. I don't know that I don't know that their presence on would be like deeply missed, right? I'm in favor of both of these gentlemen playing for other teams next year. I don't know how realistic that is. We'll talk about that in the third segment. But I think what's important to sort of outline here before we get too deep into it is like, there's value in having veterans. There's value in having guys who can show you the right way to do things. But there's also value in guys that aren't maybe necessarily the Jerami Grant types who need the ball in his hands or Malcolm Brogdon types who need the ball in his hands. There is value in having guys that can be sort of lower usage but high impact with the soft stuff. And maybe that's who the Blazers should be pursuing, because while both of these guys were productive, maybe their games don't inherently help the value of what the Blazers are striving for. Not that they impede it, but they're maybe not the perfect examples of the type of sort of, ball dominant veterans are maybe not what this team needs in the future. But the value of vets is undeniable in the league. Let's talk about that and talk about both of these guys' specific future in Portland in the third segment. But first, let me tell you about FanDuel, America's number one sports book. And listen, we got the postseason in full swing. We got the NBA playoffs rolling along. We got a couple teams already advanced into the second round. The NHL, we got the playoffs rolling along too. And baseball, we're in full swing. Played about 35 baseball games by the time you listen to this podcast. And FanDuel is your number one place to bet on every game. And right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets guaranteed. That's $150 in bonus bets, win or lose. Bet on everything from slap shots to home runs to slam dunks, all on an app that is safe, secure, and easy to use. What are you waiting for? Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and make your first bet an automatic win. That's FanDuel, America's number one sports book. Still a pass first point guard. I'm still Mike Richmond, and you are still listening to Locked On Blazers. The value of vets is real. It would be a mistake, I think, for the Blazers to have there is a certain type of fan, right, that wants no one over the age of 25 on a rebuilding team under any circumstances. You get anyone who can rent a car without paying premiums, then you're doing it wrong. I don't think you need to do that. But I think what you need to do is you need to be able to maximize what your sort of young core is going to do. And what the Blazers' young core is, how I view it, is like Scoot Henderson, Shaedon Sharpe needing the ball in their hands to be creators and figuring out which of the sort of young core wings fit together. I don't think they absolutely, under all circumstances, need to trade Jerami Grant, but it would be a mistake if the Blazers did not pick up the phone and entertain calls for what Jerami Grant's market value might be. I don't think it would be this drastic mistake if Jerami Grant's on the team in the fall. I do think it would be a drastic mistake if we hear the reporting coming out this summer that the Blazers had no interest in trading Jerami Grant and they value what he brings. And that's fine. They can value him, but they have to think about what's next. And I think not trading, I was very much in favor of exploring the Jerami Grant market at the trade deadline, even more so this summer. Malcolm Brogdon, on the other hand, why would he come back? Not that he's not good, right? I don't mean that at all. That's why I want to talk about best and worst case scenarios in their production, right? It's they were both productive and kind of if you were to draw it up and say Jerami Grant averages 20 points and shoots 40% from three, that's a pretty good season. Obviously, like the 2-point shooting, kind of chucking from mid-range that he got into a little bit, and like bad shot selection stuff was frustrating, but I think some of that was the function of the roster and sort of the lack of structure on offense in general. Brogdon is just like, he does what he does. If he's available, he's going to average 20 points, 5 rebounds, and 5 assists per 36 minutes if you play him, and just like depending on how many minutes you're going to play him and how much he's capable of playing. But why would Brogdon be back on a team that is committed to Scoot Henderson, committed to Shaedon Sharpe, has some decisions to make on what their level of commitment is to Anthony Simons? Brogdon is just, not only is it lead to, when everybody's healthy, a minutes clog. It's just like you would rather have someone who isn't maximized by being a scoring guard. And the idea when you make these trades for veterans in the Damian Lillard deal is that you eventually flip them to continue to like stockpile your assets. You can add, and I'll give 2 examples here. I like the sort of Jeff Green addition in Houston, because Green is functional enough to play in pretty much every night on a team that's relatively competitive, but he is just like a consummate role player who's been in the league for a long time and can teach you how to do the things you need to do to be a professional without soaking up too much offensive usage. He's not a ball dominant guy to do things. When the Blazers pivoted young in the sort of post LaMarcus era, the one guy they kept on the team was Chris Kaman. He just didn't play, but what he did do is teach guys how to conduct themselves, how to be responsible, how to stay in shape, and like little stuff that's like that is like it's sort of part of the NBA business, which is like at the end of the year, if we get a playoff bonus, we're going to tip out all the people who work in the locker room because they make this possible and they need the money and we don't. The sort of professional stuff, what it's like to be a professional. That was 10 years ago now, but like, there is value in veterans, but there is maybe not value in veterans that kind of get in the way. So my view of the future in Portland for both of these gentlemen is that I can't imagine Malcolm Brogdon has one. I have been saying this since last September. I might have to start imagining it. But if you heard Michael from the past, I've been banging the drum for trade Malcolm Brogdon for months. And I'm still banging the drum. Trade Malcolm Brogdon. Find value for Malcolm Brogdon. They, whether they didn't want to because the market sucked at the trade deadline, or they didn't want to because they value what he brings, I think it's okay to hold the line there. It was not what I would have done. I was not in favor of it. You heard me on the podcast, but I think it's defensible if the market wasn't there, right? Okay, we thought we were going to get these picks, and it's like we don't want like the 17th pick or the 24th pick in the 2024 draft. We want something else. If you cannot get value for Malcolm Brogdon this summer, and you go in with him as an expiring contract, you're not going to get good value for him at the trade deadline either, most likely, because he's going to be a super short-term rental for whomever is trading for him, and you're going to end up getting like a couple second-round picks and the salary to match. The market is the market. If you misread it, you might just have to eat it. But I think the Blazers need to find a deal for him. Jerami Grant, I would be if Jerami Grant gets traded, I'll probably be happy with it, but I don't think it's as imperative because of the rest of the roster. It's not like he's not like in the way of some of the like really important developmental parts, and he can still play and all of those things. But they need to explore it. They have to. Both of these guys have a future in Portland to some extent if the roster shifts enough around them. Like if the Blazers trade Anthony Simons and they want to keep Malcolm Brogdon as a third guard, that's fine. If the Blazers, value Jerami Grant because they just like don't have another starting quality power forward and they don't have a path to add one and they want to keep him around because they don't want to be like terrible, I won't love it, but I won't be super mad about it. But what the Blazers have to do with sort of these guys is say they were about as productive as we could have hoped for, and availability was an issue. Availability might be an issue going forward. They might not be as productive as they were this year. Like, how many years are you going to get 25 and 5 out of Malcolm Brogdon? How many years are you going to get 20 points on 40% from three from Jerami Grant? Hopefully a bunch more, right? And that's what you're selling in the market. But like, a regression for Grant where he shoots like even just like league average from three, like 37% from three, is really going to hurt his marketability, really going to hurt his trade value. Move now. Don't wait. Continue the rebuild in earnest. You're going to be a bad basketball team embrace it. I know there was some rumors that the Blazers wanted to sort of pursue we've already got vets on the roster. We want to be what the Rockets are. That makes sense because the Rockets aren't chasing lottery picks. The Blazers are aggressively still chasing lottery picks as they look for a foundational star. Chase them. I mean, they could come back and run it back and be healthy and probably lose 55 games, no problem. Like relatively healthy. I guess if everyone plays 82 games, it may be a little different, but like they're going to lose a bunch of games next year just by virtue of who they are. And I think Joe Cronin has kind of admitted that he's committed to this direction. I'd love to see him commit to it. And I'll say this. Both Malcolm Brogdon and Jerami Grant, really fun locker room interviews. I hope whoever they replace, equally good interviews, like willing and thoughtful talkers in the parlance of reporters. It's just, I think their on-court value in Portland displayed itself to some extent, and the sort of their ability to get in the way also displayed itself to some extent this season. That is going to do it for today's show. In tomorrow's show, we're going to wrangle up some draft rumors and maybe even take a spin on the Tankathon. Come back and join us for that one. That's what we do 5 days a week, wherever you get podcasts, and also on YouTube. I appreciate you listening. I'll talk to you soon.